All right, this is the Cortez City Council work session / special meeting. Today is Tuesday, March 26, 2024, and the time is 7 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and we're going to start with A on our workshop agenda. A is an update on prescribed fire plans from Nick Mustoe, the district ranger for the Dolores Ranger District of the San Juan National Forest. All right, so make sure your microphone is on and green.
Okay, how about now?
Perfect. Thank you.
Mayor and council members, first and foremost, thank you for having me this evening. These are wonderful facilities, and it's just wonderful to be in front of you tonight. Wanted to accomplish a couple things, starting off with just introducing myself. My name is Nick Mustoe. I'm District Ranger for the Dolores Ranger District of the San Juan National Forest. New resident to Southwest Colorado, but very much in love with the communities that I serve, and frequent resident to the Cortez Dog Park. So if you see me out there, say hi. I'm certainly loving the area and all that there is here. The topic I wanted to bring in front of you tonight is our prescribed fire program. Ultimately, there's a few reasons why we have our prescribed fire program and what we try to accomplish through that. So first and foremost, our prescribed fire program is for our communities. And so that's a couple different ways that it's for our communities. Long-term risk reduction, in the sense if we can get these fuels out of the landscape to burn under moderate conditions. Underneath our tree canopies out in the woods, and so that those might be different on a given day. And then we usually call in a meteorologist, to really make sure that we're getting. And then, and then as we get towards the day of, we do a variety of fuel modeling, and so we come up with, how fast could fire spread in that particular unit based on fuel samples, based on our data and some modeling, and look at whatever that potential is. We want to overstaff what our response to that would be. And so there's a set amount of production that we would imagine that we could put in a line for hand crews or for a dozer and the other sorts of tools that we use out there. And so we overstaff our fires and to make sure that we can respond in the case anything went where we didn't want it to. Another part of our process is a go, no-go checklist. This is something that we do on the day of. And so the go, no-go checklist is between me and the burn boss that day. And so we're really going over, how is the fatigue of our people that day? Where are we at in the season? Do we have everything lined up? Do we have signage? Have we made the notifications that we're supposed to make? And can we be successful that given day? And I view our prescribed fire program as the most important thing that I do in my position. And so I don't have any hesitancy to call off burning a day if it's not the right conditions, if we don't have the right staffing, if it's not the right decision. But certainly, trying to reduce this long-term risk to municipal watersheds and communities. And then we continually monitor the weather every hour on site and use those updates to decide if we continue to proceed or not. In addition to, we do what's called a test fire. And so we pick a representative spot where we're going to start ignitions after we've gone through that go, no-go checklist and feel comfortable proceeding. And we see, are our expectations of the fire behavior that day being met by conditions on the ground? And making sure that we both have not more extreme than we expected, but also not less than we expected, that we're not getting the fuel reduction that we want to see to benefit our communities. And I think, perhaps the most relevant to City of Cortez, is the concern about smoke. So certainly I wanted to chat about that as well. We are regulated by the state of Colorado. Every single burn that we do, prescribed fire, has a smoke permit from them. We stay in constant communication with the state of Colorado over how many acres we're accomplishing. We get feedback from them on proceeding for the next day or not, and we follow their advice. So this is different than a situation of a wildfire. If we were to have, a large-scale fire, there is no smoke regulation on that. So part of the reason of doing our prescribed burns is to have a little bit of smoke now, and not to have a month-long smoke that we couldn't control. But it is very much top of mind, and I certainly, understand the importance to communities and the importance to public health when it comes to smoke. And with the way that our landscape sets up, we can have down canyon overnight winds that push smoke towards our communities. It's never our intention. We try to actively get out there early in the day to take care of most of that smoke goes up and out before the evening comes. But I certainly know that it can happen, and I certainly take responsibility for that. With that, is there any questions on our prescribed burn process before I go into what we have planned for the spring and fall?
Are there maximum acreages that you burn as part of your prescribed program?
So that would be generally controlled by that smoke permit, and it would be fuel and conditions dependent. What we've seen is if we're going into an area that we've already treated once, that produces less smoke because there's less fuels to consume in that particular case. So it's kind of unit by unit specific.
And do you do like source water, watershed? These, or are you kind of targeting them to places where it is channeling into source water?
So, municipal watersheds are huge, I think, in my thinking of where is it that we need to go with our prescribed fire program and where are we now. So absolutely, it's a factor. Yeah. And just to answer the size thing for a second too, is like our general units might be between 200 or like 400-ish on the small side, and maybe 2,000-ish on the larger side.
David?
Yes, couple of short ones. I was just curious about your rate of turnover and how profoundly the smoke inhalation plays into that.
Trying to understand the question, I'm sorry.
You mean employee turnover?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I can answer the employee turnover, and then the question, so the folks that we have out there doing prescribed burning, nearly universally have over 10 years of experience. And if we need folks, and if let's say we had a more complex burn on the unit, we would call in folks from out of area and assist them with our local folks to kind of make sure we had both the local experience as well as the having applied this on the ground experience. And then in regards to smoke, what was your question?
Yes.
Did smoke play into high turnover?
No. The folks that we have in the district now running our fire response program, have an extensive experience on the district.
Thank you.
Do you have any recommendations for people, we live near the forest and smoke is always going to be an issue, air purifiers or closing your windows at night, or do you have any material on that or just suggestions for the community?
So both of those tips that you provided are good advice. I would certainly start there. I would defer to the experts when it comes to smoke, which would be the state of Colorado that regulates us on that. And with that, I'll kind of go into what we have planned for the spring and the fall. And so, next slide, please. So we have roughly 15,000 acres prepped and ready to go for this current year, that's spring and fall. That does not mean that we'll burn 15,000 acres. What that means is that knowing that each of these units kind of has different conditions of which it would be, as you move down the mountain, it gets ready in the season earlier. As you move up the mountain, more snow, more water, that's later season units. And so we might not have conditions. In fact, we're quite unlikely to have conditions to burn all 15,000 acres of that. But what we do is set ourselves up to be successful, whatever the wind conditions might be, whatever the snowmelt conditions might be, to take advantage of those conditions to get in here and do this work. There's 4 general areas there. We've kind of got up off Cottonwood Road, and then down by Boggy, over in Salter, and then on Hay Camp. It's kind of the 4 areas that we're looking at this year. And then next slide. And then, broadening out, looking to the 5-year plan, which I'll show you in the next slide. So the bright red areas are the areas that we showed you for this year, and then the other colors are the further out year plans for our 5-year plan. And of course, everything's contingent on conditions and weather of that particular year and when we might be able to get to years 2, 3, 4, and 5 in this map. But
What's kind of like the life cycle where you need to come back and reburn an area?
Sure. So it depends somewhat on vegetation type. It's kind of, so in ponderosa pine, which is where a lot of this that we're showing is, that fire return interval, depending on location, could be somewhere between every 4 years to every 15 years. That's what historically would have occurred. We would still have a effective fuels reduction program, on the farther end of that, because we have a lot of acres, and every 4 years, is a quick return interval to come back to these units.
Yeah.
But good question.
Do you all have a strong connection with the county PIO, our PIO, in terms of getting notification out when those are going to take place, like in advance, and then while they're also taking place?
So I know that we have a notification list that we work through on every one of our prescribed burns. Not as involved enough to know who's on that list, but I would accept all contact information of who should be on it.
Thank you.
I just had another question about the smoke permits through CDPH. Mm-hmm. Are they, if smoke comes down and settles into the city, are they taking measurements based on the city and telling you to stop burning, even if it's further away, even if you're up at Boggy or somewhere else? Is that kind of what that is doing there?
There's a variety of smoke monitors in particular, and but the established standard for 24 hours, and then we would cease burning.
Okay.
Usually how that works. But that's based on the monitors, yes.
So I'm looking at this one, that private property. Is that like just north of the Boggy Draw parking lot?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. I mean, and I guess it's really dependent on what.
Right.
But.
So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just curious what time of year, because that place gets busy.
Absolutely. And I know how important that is to our communities, for sure. And so that particular unit, we would need a wind out of the southwest pointing to the northeast away from that private. And so that fire spread, we would start it, on that private line, and it would move away from the private. And so, but it is a concern of, how popular that area is, with, making sure nobody's dispersed camping, all those sort of safety concerns. I think for that particular unit, what we're looking at doing is perhaps a closure of that trailhead area for, as minimal time as we need to get in there, burn it, remove any burning trees next to the trailhead, that sort of thing, any hazards to the public, and then we'd open it back up as soon as we could.
Okay.
But we take our boundary lines against private very seriously. But no further questions. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in front of us, and we appreciate building a relationship with you in the Forest Service, so we hope to see you again.
That'd be great. Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on our agenda to B, council general discussion. Does any council members have any items they'd like to bring up for discussion? All right, seeing none, then we'll...
Had real quick out an email this morning with the results from the 2023 point in time count of all the unhoused people in our county. It's not broken down by city, but like I explained in the email, most of the agencies that count the unsheltered in our county are in the city of Cortez, and this last year was one of the pushes to try to get an accurate tally. Like the bridge and other agencies have always participated in this count, and it's a way sort of nationwide where everyone counts unsheltered people in their communities at the same day, same time, to try to get some type of census and pulse on what's going on. And so last year they counted a total of 124 unhoused people in our community. And yeah, I sent you guys the report. It's available online for the public, and it breaks that down even more based on questions they ask them, like if they're families or veterans or disabled and things like that. So, I mean, hopefully these numbers with the more support systems we have in our community can lower, but it's good that this year we're getting some real solid baseline data.
Do you know the number for, you know, that the list of names that Pinion has? Like, how many do they have on that list versus this 124?
So they had like a similar number on their list, but Pinion was one of the key players in doing this count. So
Okay, awesome.
and her crew were heavily involved in checking between their list and the other list in the community. And then if people it's sort of like a form where you ask people like a bunch of different questions, whatever they're willing to give you. And then when they turn those in, they'll make sure people aren't duplicated or whatever. I think Lucia's list may have more people than this because she has kept people on a rolling basis, that some people are pretty transient in our community and may only be here certain seasons, but yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for sharing with us. Appreciate that. Any other council members have something they want to bring up? Okay. Seeing none, then we'll adjourn this meeting and we'll start our regular meeting at 7:30.